Cleaning up after a long day. How are you holding up? Gold asked Mrs. Ben. Mrs. Ben looked up, her eyes wary but determined. It's hard, but I'm learning. I understand now what it means to work for what you have and to respect others. Gold nodded.
I see you, my heart they beats. A lady of all men's dreams. You be the one where they make me, they put all the.
Hey guys, we followed Gold's journey. A young woman mistreated by her fiancé Daniel and his family, the Bens. Despite her wealth, Gold hid her true identity to test their intentions. Here is a recap of Gold's journey. Gold, a young woman, was engaged to Daniel from the wealthy Bens family. The Ben family treated Gold poorly, seeing her as inferior due to her lack of wealth and social status. Gold discovered Daniel's infidelity and the family's financial deceit, and she gathered evidence to expose them. She revealed her true identity as the heir to the Mara fortune and left the Ben household. The Ben family's empire crumbled as they faced financial investigation and social ostracization. Guys, been a while with Gold. Let's check on Gold to see what's going on with her since after the grand reveal of her being a secret heiress to her father's fortune. Returning subscribers, thank you for your unwavering support. Seeing my video for the first time, please consider joining the growing community and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our tales. Now, let's get back to Gold. Gold stood at the window of her luxurious penthouse, watching the city below. The morning sun cast a golden hue over the skyline. It had been months since she had left the Bens, and her life had transformed dramatically. Her parents' fortune, once hidden, now supported her charitable endeavors. She had become a powerful figure in the business world, respected for her intelligence and kindness. Her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant, Clara. Good morning, Miss Maya. The board meeting is in an hour. Also, you have a visitor scheduled for 2 p.m. Gold smiled and replied, Thank you, Clara. I will be ready at 2 p.m. Gold sat in her office, waiting. The door opened, and lo and behold, Mr. Ben, Mrs. Ben, Daniel and Amma, the entire Ben's family walked in. They looked different, worn out and defeated. They had come to ask for help. Humbled by their new reality, Gold listened as Mr. Ben, with a shaky voice, said, Gold or Miss Maya, we are here to ask for your help. Help? After everything you did to me, if I was really a nobody, is that what I'll be going through in your hands? Gold raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Ben's voice trembled. We know we were wrong. We treated you terribly, but we have nothing left. We are facing bankruptcy, and we need your assistance. Gold contemplated their words. She had every right to refuse them, but chose compassion and forgiveness. I will help you, but there will be conditions. You must publicly apologize for the way you treated me, work for my foundation, and Daniel must repay the money he squandered. The Bens agreed, and over the next few months, they worked hard at the Gold's foundation. They learned the value of empathy and kindness. Gold watched their progress, hopeful that they had truly changed. One evening, Gold visited the foundation. She found Mrs. Ben in the kitchen, preparing meal for the homeless. How are things going? Gold asked. Mrs. Ben looked up, her eyes filled with genuine gratitude. It's hard work, but it's fulfilling. I've never felt this sense of purpose before. Gold smiled. I'm glad to hear that. Daniel approached, carrying boxes of supply. Miss Maya, I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity. We are trying to make amends. Gold nodded. I appreciate that, Daniel. Remember, this is about more than just making amends. It's about truly changing. But not everything was as it seemed. Everything seems to be going fine. Gold had no idea that Mrs. Ben harbored resentment and was plotting to reclaim her former status. She was not comfortable being a commoner. She's not used to that kind of lifestyle. She secretly began siphoning money from Gold's account, using her assets at the foundation. One day, Gold received a call from her financial advisor. "Miss Meyer, there's been some unusual activity in your account. Large sum of money have been transferred to unfamiliar account." Gold's heart sank. How? This had never happened until the banks showed up. She had trusted the banks, but now it seems that trust had been betrayed again. "Can you trace the transfer?" she asked. "We are working on it," the advisor replied. Gold spent the next few days in a state of disbelief and anger. She had given the banks a chance to redeem themselves, and now it seems Mrs. Ben had taken advantage of her kindness. The truth came to light when Gold's advisor confirmed that the transfer had been made using credentials from the foundation. Confronting Mrs. Ben, Gold felt a mix of anger and disappointment. "Why, Mrs. Ben? Why?" Gold demanded, her voice shaking. "I gave you a chance and you tried to steal from me." Mrs. Ben's face was pale. I was desperate, Gold. We lost everything and I thought I could get it back." Gold shook her head, feeling the weight of betrayal. "You will face the consequences." Gold took Mrs. Ben to court, armed with evidence of the financial theft. The rest of the banks were shocked and horrified, unaware of Mrs. Ben's action. They stood by Gold, supporting her decision to seek justice in court. Mrs. Ben was charged with theft and fraud. The judge, seeing the evidence and hearing the testimonies, sentenced her to community service and required her to work as a servant in Gold's office as part of her punishment. The first day of Mrs. Ben's servitude was humiliating. Gold assigned her tasks that were difficult and menial, a stark contrast to her previous life of luxury and opulence. One particular incident stood out. Gold called Mrs. Ben into her office. "Mrs. Ben, I need these documents sorted and filled by the end of the day," she said, handing her a stack of papers. Mrs. Ben nodded, her face red with shame. "Yes, Miss Meyer." As Mrs. Ben walked, Gold watched her carefully. It was a lesson in humility and accountability. Later that day, Gold found Mrs. Ben struggling with the filing system. "Do you need help?" Gold asked, her tone firm but not unkind. Mrs. Ben looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. Gold sighed. "I will show you," she said, guiding Mrs. Ben through the process. The humiliation was palpable, but it was a necessary step in Mrs. Ben's redemption. She had to understand the impact of her actions and the value of honesty and hard work. Over the next few months, Mrs. Ben's transformation was evident. She worked diligently, learning the ropes of office work and earning the respect of her colleagues. Gold watched her progress with a mixture of satisfaction and hope. One evening, Gold found Mrs. Ben in the break room, cleaning up after a long day. "How are you holding up?" Gold asked Mrs. Ben. Mrs. Ben looked up, her eyes wary but determined. "It's hard, but I'm learning. I understand now what it means to work for what you have and to respect others." Gold nodded. "I'm glad to hear that. Remember, this is about more than just making amends. It's about truly changing." As the months passed, Mrs. Ben continued to work hard, her attitude shifting from resentment to gratitude. She began to understand the value of humility and the importance of treating others with respect. One day, Gold received a letter from Mrs. Ben. It was heartfelt and sincere, expressing her deep regret for the pain she had caused and her gratitude for the chance Gold had given her to change. Gold sat at her desk, the letter in her hand, feeling a sense of peace. She had not only changed her own life, but had also impacted the lives of those who had wronged her. She had shown them the importance of compassion and the strength of forgiveness. As she looked out of her office window, she felt a sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth it. She had risen above the pain and betrayal, emerging stronger and more determined. This particular afternoon, as Mrs. Ben was tidying the office, she overheard a conversation between Gold and Clara. "Miss Maya, we've received another report of suspicious activity on your account," Clara said, her voice concerned. Gold frowned. "Again? We need to get to the bottom of this. It can't be Mrs. Ben this time. She's been closely monitored." Mrs. Ben felt a pang of guilt. She realized the depth of the mess she had created and the ongoing consequences of her actions. That evening, she approached Gold with a heavy heart. "Miss Maya," Mrs. Ben began, her voice shaky, "I want to help. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I want to make things right." Gold looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "How do you propose to help?" "I still have contact from my old life. Maybe I can find out who is behind this new activity," Mrs. Ben suggested. Gold hesitated, but then nodded. "All right, but understand this is your last chance. One misstep and there will be no more leniency." Mrs. Ben nodded, determined to prove herself. The next day, Mrs. Ben used her connection discreetly, trying to track down any lead on the suspicious activity. She worked tirelessly, driven by a newfound sense of responsibility and remorse. Weeks passed, and Mrs. Ben finally uncovered a crucial piece of information. She approached Gold with her finding. "Miss Maya, I think I found something," Mrs. Ben said, handing Gold a folder. "There's a group that's been targeting wealthy individuals, and they may have access to your account." Gold reviewed the document, her expression serious. "This is significant. We need to alert the authorities and tighten security." Mrs. Ben nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes to help." As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that an external group had indeed been targeting Gold's account. The authorities, with Mrs. Ben's assistance, were able to apprehend the culprit. Gold was relieved, but also reflective. Despite everything, Mrs. Ben had played a crucial role in solving the issue. One bright morning, as Gold was reviewing proposal for new charitable project in her office, her assistant Clara entered, looking uneasy. "Miss Maya, there is someone here to see you," Clara said softly. "Who is it?" Gold asked, not looking up from her papers. "It's Daniel," Clara replied, her voice cautious. Gold's heart skipped a beat. She had not spoken to Daniel one-on-one since the day she walked out of his family house. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Send him in." Daniel entered the office, looking different than she remembered. His once confident demeanor was now overshadowed by uncertainty and remorse. He stood in front of her desk, his eyes searching her face for any sign of forgiveness. "Gold," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I know I don't deserve your time, but please hear me out." Gold looked at him, her expression calm but guided. "What do you want, Daniel?" Daniel took a deep breath. "I've come to apologize. I was blind to what was happening. I should have seen how my family was treating you and stood up for you. I was a coward and I let you down. I'm so sorry." Gold listened, her heart heavy with a mix of emotions. She had loved Daniel once, but that love had been shattered by betrayal and deceit. "I've changed, Gold," Daniel continued. "Losing you made me realize what a fool I've been. I want to make things right. Please give me another chance." Gold stood up, her eyes meeting his. "Daniel, you hurt me deeply. You and your family used me, belittled me, and treated me like I was nothing. And when I needed you the most, you were nowhere to be found. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I love you, Gold. I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life making up for my mistakes. Gold shook her head, her voice firm. Love isn't just words, Daniel. It's actions. It's standing by someone, respecting them and valuing them for who they are. You failed me on all those counts. Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Please, Gold, I've learned from my mistake. I want to be the man you deserve. Gold sighed, her heart aching for the man she once loved. It's too late, Daniel. I've moved on. I've found strength and purpose beyond our relationship. I can't go back to that piece of pain. Daniel's shoulders slumped, the weight of her words sinking in. Is there no hope for us? Gold looked at him, her eyes softening slightly. There is always hope, Daniel, but not for us as a couple. I've forgiven you, but I can't forget what happened. I need to continue on my path, and you need to find yours. Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he nodded. I understand. Thank you for hearing me out. I truly wish you all the happiness in the world. Gold, with a heavy heart, Daniel turned and walked out of her office, leaving Gold to reflect on their past and the future that lay ahead. Determined to make amends, Daniel decided to contribute to Gold's foundation anonymously, hoping to support her cause without expecting anything in return. Meanwhile, Gold continued to build her foundation, focusing on helping those in need and making a difference in the world. One day, while organizing a community event, Gold ran into Clara. Have you seen the latest donation? It's quite substantial, Clara said, handing her a report. Gold scanned the document, her eyes widened in surprise. Who made this donation? Clara shrugged. It's anonymous, but the amount is significant. It could really help us expand our programs. Gold smiled, a sense of warmth filling her heart. She had a feeling she knew who the donor was, but she decided to respect the privacy. This particular afternoon, Gold received a call from the court. Mrs. Ben's sentence was nearing its end, and they wanted to update her on the proceeding. Gold sat in her office, reflecting on the journey she had taken. She thought about Daniel and the Banks family and how far they all had come. She realized that forgiveness and redemption were powerful forces, capable of transforming lives and healing wounds. The day Mrs. Ben's sentence ended was marked with a mixed emotions. She had served her time as a servant in Gold's office, and while it had been humiliating, it had also been a period of deep reflection and growth. Gold called Mrs. Ben into her office for a final conversation. Mrs. Ben, your sentence is over. How do you feel? Mrs. Ben looked at Gold, her eyes filled with gratitude and humility. Miss Meyer, I can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity. I've learned so much about myself and about what it means to truly serve others. Gold nodded, her expression thoughtful. I'm glad to hear that. Redemption is a journey, and you've taken the first step. What's next for you? Mrs. Ben smiled, a hint of determination in her eyes. I want to continue helping others. I want to use what I've learned to make a positive impact. If you allow it, I would like to stay on and work with your foundation. Gold considered her words, a sense of pride swelling within her. I would be honored to have you on the team. Mrs. Ben, let's continue this journey together and make a difference in the world. Mrs. Ben became an integral part of the foundation, using her experience to mentor others and promote the value of humility, honesty, and service. The Bens, as a family, learned the true meaning of redemption and the power of second chances. Gold's story was one of resilience, forgiveness, and transformation. She had faced betrayal and pain, but she emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Her journey was far from over, and she looked forward to the future with hope and determination. Now, to you, my beautiful viewers, what would you do if you were in Gold's shoe? Would you have helped the Banks family, or would you have let them face the consequences of their actions? Share your thoughts in the comment section below and stay tuned for more inspiring stories. Ghost stories. Continue with new challenges and opportunities on the horizon. What will she face next? Stay tuned to find out. Till I see you again in my next story. Goodbye.